Hi. So, I think it's important for a person like me to talk a little bit about why I like to speak about how I left the religion I was born into and why I think it's good and okay to critique it and talk about it. Um, Anybody who is born into a religion, I think at a certain point in their life, needs to evaluate their their belief system. That goes for any religion, And after you evaluate it and you honestly look at it and say, I was born into this. If I hadn't been born into this, would I still believe it the way that I believe it? If I hadn't been taught that it was true from the time that I was, saying, my first words, would I still, and it's important to do that. I didn't actually do that. That's not how I left my religion. I have my own story, and that's why I like to talk about it, is because we all have our own stories. I left my religion, which was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or what is more commonly known online as the Mormon Church, when I was 22 years old. I didn't start speaking about that experience in a public fashion until I was 35. And so during that time, I I was figuring things out for myself. Basically, I was reevaluating, my the everything that I'd been taught. You start looking at the world differently, and you kind of swing. I call it a paradigm swing, because you shift around a little bit until the dust settles. I notice that a lot of people who leave this particular religion fall into, and this could go for actually a lot of religions, fall into one of four categories. Either, kind of imagine like the points of a compass. You have one that swings, very Christian, and a lot of them do. A lot of them swing into very strong Christianity if once they leave the Mormon Church. If not, they swing towards the opposite, which is more toward the materialism, atheist, but also no interest in spirituality whatsoever. And then you have the ones that kind of go more into the occult. They notice certain phenomenon, certain things that may be constituted to what we would call a psychic phenomenon, things that are still mysterious, but they attribute it to something. They attribute it to, the Wiccan, or occult, philosophies. And then, and then at the bottom, it would also be people who recognize these phenomenon, but say that there's always going to be a scientific explanation. We just maybe don't know what it is yet. And that's where I try to hold myself in the realm of scientific and skeptical thinking. And it's been a difficult journey to walk away from being very spiritually minded, believing in angels, believing in spirit guides, believing in afterlife. All of these things have to be reevaluated once you leave a faith. And so I did all of that. I did all of that thinking, and I feel I put a lot of effort into my deconversion, so much so that I want to now share that journey with others, and also, maybe be there to kind of answer some questions of things that I went through for people who have questions that might be considering that type of thing. I always say that I critique any religion. Mormonism by far, because that's the one that I was raised in, that's the one that I'm the most familiar with, and that's the one that leaves an unsettling feeling inside of me. I think that it's important to do it out of a spirit of compassion and love. And one of the reasons I think that I've been successful in getting my point across to people is that I still care about these people greatly. I think that the people in this religion are by far some of the most caring, sincere, honest people, giving people. So I never try to critique a person or disparage their faith in an individual way, telling them that they're stupid or naive or things like that. But I do critique the doctrine and the foundation and the principles and how it was created. And I like to talk about those issues because even when I was a believer of this religion, I had problems with certain doctrine, things that I would ask other believers, church leaders, um, women's, the young women's leaders. I would ask them, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with these feelings that are naturally, they go against every moral grain inside of my body? How do you deal with this? And because I couldn't, I always wanted to understand this type of thing and have the faith and be a true believer. I always was a true believer, but I still had questions. And I think it's important for people to not just say, and this, because this was the answer that they would usually give me back then, I don't need to have a testimony of that right now. It's not required by God for me to have a testimony of this right now, or I don't need, basically they're saying, I don't need to think about this right now, because if I did, I might start doubting my faith. The Mormon church is definitely one of those ones that is in a realm a little bit above its own. It's not just a regular Christian type of church, but it's not, I wouldn't consider it a cult either. A lot of people have asked me, well, is it like Scientology? Is it like a cult? Would you consider it like that? No, I would not consider it like that. From what I've heard of the Scientology people, it is by far different experience. Like I said, I don't think that I would ever get any real negative backlash from any of the things that I'm saying, unless I started influencing a huge number of people. And that, because the Mormon church just, I from what I've seen, does not really attack people the way that the Scientology church does, So I'm not really concerned about that, but I am concerned about how they think about me, because I remember how I was raised. And I remember that when a person leaves this faith, if they speak out against it, if they critique it, if they become somebody who fights, quote unquote, fights against it, it's like more unhonorable. It's less honorable to do that than it is just to walk away and have your own life and just go have your own life. But you have to remember that that's what they tell you when you're within the church. When you leave it, and you see, my journey of leaving the church was a stepping stone. It was an important part of my life, and it would be unreal for me to just ignore that this part happened, because everything about who I am today reflects who I used to be, how I used to identify, and how I used to believe. And so I think it's important for people who are still in this religion to remember that it is not evil, or you're being led by the devil to speak about your experience and how you deconverted from a religion, because it's a very important part of a person's life and their journey, and it should be heard. And it should, we should have more people who come out and speak about these things. I think it's very important for people to share their own personal stories of why they, and how they got the strength to leave something that is so centered in how you believe. It's your whole worldview, and to be able to leave an entire worldview, I'm deeply interested in those stories. So I share mine. And yes, I critique it. And yes, I critique the doctrine, and I critique the things that I have problems with. But I always care about the people. And I don't think that I ever would stop. Even if they had a problem with me and started saying bad things about me, it's just because it's because I'm stepping on the toes of their faith. And I understand that. So, if it's causing you to doubt and question certain things, don't get mad at me. Think about your own doctrine and start thinking about that just a little bit more, because it's a good self-evaluation to do. All right, I'm going to leave you guys with that. I'll talk to you later.